to our second annual Mega Wellness Summit, where we are transforming lives one aha moment at a time. I'm your host, Nikki Jensen, and thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this event with your friends and family. So I'm truly excited to welcome today's guest because we're talking about the thyroid. It seems as though, everyone I speak to has an issue with their thyroid. So my intention for this interview is that you are able to get your questions answered so you can gain clarity on how to help yourself heal your thyroid. Welcome, Jen Wittman. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you. I get all your emails, and I've seen you on all these telesummits, so it's an honor to have you be a part of Mega Wellness Summit and truly to just speak with you and to get your wisdom and to help our Mega Wellness Summit listeners. So really, I'm very excited.
Me too.
I'm fired up. Right on. So my first question to you is, how did this happen to you? Because I know that you struggled with your thyroid. So what is the road that led you down this road that you're on today?
It's really interesting because it's kind of a long road, and I think that what I've noticed with a lot of my clients is they've had similar craziness happen in their life that led them down this path. So with me, it actually started with a pretty traumatic accident. My husband and I were hit by a semi-truck almost 10 years ago, and that really changed the trajectory of my life and my health. So, we get hit by the truck, and I end up with a bunch of physical issues, but also some PTSD and brain trauma, which now I know years later, and they're showing in the research, that head trauma can set off autoimmunity. So before I knew all this, though, basically what happened is I had been hit by the semi-truck. My health had started to decline. And like many people, before this had happened, I had suffered from living in our crazy modern culture. I was eating the typical American diet full of processed foods. I'm a chef, so I'm just a foodie by nature, and I just loved to eat anything that was on the menu. I worked between 80 to 100 hours as a chef and was super overstressed and overwhelmed in just about every facet of my life. And then I got pregnant and had my son. And after that, it just seemed to be the tipping point into all of these symptoms. My hair was falling out, and I started to gain weight, and I was extremely fatigued and panicky and overwhelmed all the time. And then I also had all these new food allergies I hadn't had before. So basically, I was a mess. And I went from doctor to doctor looking for answers, but just not getting any help. And after having my son, it just seemed like my life was filled with one symptom after another that I couldn't get a handle on, which was really strange to me because, living that standard sort of Western American culture life, I was just used to kind of pushing through things. Like I could be stressed, no problem. I could be overwhelmed, no problem. I just was go, 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 go. And then here it was. I had symptom after symptom I couldn't figure out, and I was just feeling so terrible. So I kept looking for help. I saw so many doctors and specialists, and everyone told me, you're fine. Your blood tests are normal. You're just a new mom. It's just stress. Don't worry about it. All the stuff will go away. But it didn't go away, and I was so frustrated because I felt terrible. And eventually I got to a point where I felt like I was a shadow of my normal self. Like I didn't have any energy to do anything. I could barely take care of my newborn son. I didn't want to hang out with my friends anymore. I was too tired to do it, and I had a hard time even engaging with my husband. I just didn't want to do anything. So finally, after seeing 12 different doctors and specialists, ending up in the ER twice, which is a really big deal for me because I don't love hospitals, and I even had my son at home, and so I would say I'm hospital averse, And I at some point I was begging my husband to call the ambulance. You got to get me to the hospital. That's how bad I was feeling.
Why were you going to the hospital though? What was your symptoms?
So what I was having, there's something called a thyroid storm, and so what was happening to me in that moment is that like all this thyroid hormone was being dumped into my system all at once, and I basically I was almost blacking. I was seeing white light. I was vomiting for 12 to 14 hours at a time. I couldn't keep anything down. I started shaking with chills and then hyperventilating, which I had never done in my entire life. And then, not getting enough oxygen, and I just started to see the white light and was like, you got to get me to the hospital. And so it was just things where I thought, I might die. I might be dying. Like I didn't even know what this was, because before that I had never experienced anything like that. So by some fluke, my son, after he was born, was experiencing a lot of these new symptoms I had. So we were trying to get my son help. He had a really colicky beginning and just all kinds of issues with his bowel movements and his body. And we were just trying, and he had yeast rashes everywhere, and we couldn't figure it out because I was eating at this point a really decent diet, all organic food. I was still eating gluten and all that stuff because I didn't know what my condition was, but I was eating really whole foods and all organic. And I didn't know how to help him, and I was so confused as to why he was having all these problems. So I end up at being referred to a functional and integrative doctor for him. And when I'm in this appointment with my son, this doctor who's never met me looks at me and then asks my husband to take the baby out of the room because he wants to talk to me privately. And as soon as they leave, the man says to me, "What is going on with you?" And literally I broke down sobbing in his office and told him of this 4-year saga of symptom after symptom, doctor after doctor, not getting any help, and I didn't know what to do, but that I was suffering. And he basically said, "I know what this is. I can give you a simple blood test to prove it." And there it was, like plain as day. I had Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition. And from there, I just started researching everything I could about the thyroid and autoimmune conditions. I ended up reversing Hashimoto's and eliminating all my symptoms without ever having to go on medication. And because I felt so alone in this struggle for so long, I decided to make it my mission to get resources and real help to other women out there who are desperately seeking solutions to thyroid disease and symptoms. So now I teach women how to reverse thyroid disease naturally without medication, and if they're already on medication, I teach them how to support their bodies so they can either decrease or wean off their medications completely.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's one. I mean, okay, so it's terrible what happened to you, but look at how the road takes you down to where you are today, because this is your path, and this is what you were meant to do in your life. And, oh, man, so I know so many women. Okay, let's just address this. Why women? Why are women experiencing so many problems with their thyroid?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, it happens for several reasons. One, we take on a lot of the stress, right? We take on stress. I really feel like the thyroid, this growth in thyroid and autoimmunity has to do with sort of this, it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle disease. It's our modern lifestyle. So we've got all the stress we're taking on. There's sort of this expectation that we have to do it all. We have to be great at our job, great at home, great wife or partner, great mom, great friend, great sister, great daughter, all of these things, right? So we just put an enormous burden on ourselves, an enormous amount of stress on ourselves. And just that itself can, debilitate the adrenals and create the leaky gut and just create the right environment for a thyroid or autoimmune condition to rear its head. So I think that's one thing. The other thing, I polled my community and found out that 90% of the people who answered the poll weren't diagnosed with autoimmune condition or thyroid condition until after they gave birth. So I feel like that huge hormonal shift that we go through and that amazing process actually can be the final straw or the trigger that moves us into that direction. Because if you're going into your pregnancy maybe already stressed, Our corporations out there don't really support taking time off while you're pregnant or after. And so you're still trying to juggle it all while you're simultaneously growing a baby on the inside. And then you go through this hormonal shift that I really think is the trigger. And then I would say thirdly, we're sort of socialized often, especially my generation, to not speak up and to not use your voice. And when you look at ancient medical traditions like Ayurveda or traditional Chinese medicine, they don't even really have a name for thyroid condition or Hashimoto's. They really look at it as a blockage of energy in your throat, and your throat is the fifth chakra or the seat of communication. And I feel that a lot of women, or what I have witnessed with myself and my clients, is that we don't speak up. We don't use our voice. We don't say when something is aggravating us. We stuff and suppress a lot of emotions. We end up being resentful, all kinds of things. And because we're not powerful in our voice, or because we're not using it often, we're actually blocking that energetic channel. And I think that has a lot to do with the growth in these conditions.
I think that 1,000 women just went, I just had an aha moment. Yes, that's me. Because I know that I just said that. I had an aha moment, and I do not use, as far as I know, I don't have a thyroid condition. But what I do know is, just like you said, I don't use my voice. And yes, you are 100% correct. And, I really, really want to change this for women. I really want to inspire, just like you, how to use your voice in a way that we can communicate our feelings and stop the emotional block that, and I get a lot of Reiki sessions, right? And that's where, seriously, when the pendulum goes over my thyroid, my neck, it's at a dead stop. There is no energy there. So after the Reiki session, it's then going into the right direction, so where I know, okay, energy is back in there. But every time I don't use my voice, it's a block. So, wow, that is truly, truly powerful stuff there. And, so let's talk about, I love that you talked about that aspect, because I'm all about that. But also, how much of our diet affects our thyroid?
Yeah, well, our diet plays a huge role on how our thyroids function, right, and your health in general. So if you're following the standard American diet or eating highly refined and processed foods, it creates a ton of inflammation in your system, which can affect your thyroid and the other systems that work in concert with your thyroid. And if you have a thyroid condition and you're still eating gluten or drinking coffee or drinking a lot of caffeinated beverages, it can also affect your thyroid. So what's really nourishing to your thyroid is to be eating whole or real food, full of lots of vegetables and fruits and high-quality fats and high-quality proteins. But really, diet is the foundation, because you can do everything else. And let me tell you, I did not want to change my diet when I was first diagnosed. That was the very last thing I was planning on changing. And I had tried to trick myself. I was just like, I am going to do every other thing, every other remedy I've read about, everything that seems to be successful. I'm going to do all of those other things and see if I can just stick to my regular diet. And let me tell you, I could not. It is the foundation of healing your thyroid, or if you have Hashimoto's, your autoimmune condition, because you have, the Hippocrates was all about this: let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food, right? So it's the foundation of all healing. Your gut is really the foundation of your health.
Absolutely. I always blame soy for interfering with our thyroid function. And I've talked to several different doctors and specialists, and, I feel that estrogens, phytoestrogens, do have an effect on our thyroid. And so what do you think? How does soy affect the thyroid?
Yeah, I think it has a huge effect, and the shame in it is we were all, pushed into eating tons of soy, right? I mean, the marketing machine, the soy complex, they were all just about pushing soy down our throats, literally, and saying, eat this so that you can, so you don't have breast cancer and all these things. And so soy was really, at least it felt like for 10 to 20 years, is really the food to eat for health. And I mean, that equals health, right? And phytoestrogens can really mess up the rest of the way your hormones work. So you're not, when you're dealing with a thyroid condition, you're not only dealing with your thyroid hormones, you're dealing with all the other hormones. They all work together. And phytoestrogens can really throw your system off. And your system doesn't even process these hormones correctly, because it's not what's natural to us. And in addition to that, and I would put it slightly in the same category, is birth control pills, which I was on birth control for 18 years before, I ended up having my child and being diagnosed with this. And there's a great new documentary coming out called Sweetening the Pill by my friends Abby Epstein and Ricky Lake, and they're going to blow everybody's mind. I totally recommend when this comes out that people see it, because you're going to see where potentially your birth control use actually triggered some of this too and went into it. So when we're putting in these hormones that aren't natural to us, we are messing our whole system. Our system knows how to process real whole foods and real, there's such a craze over all these supplements, and yes, sometimes we need supplementation, but our body doesn't always process it like it would if you had just gotten those vitamins and nutrients from an apple versus, a pill pressed with all this kind of stuff. So I would put the soy and even, birth control kind of in the same category, in that it's something that your body doesn't process correctly and can actually tip off the balance of your hormones, which when you're dealing with a thyroid condition, the more that's tipped off, the more you have to bring it back into balance. And it's almost like a trickle-down effect or a cyclical effect. I don't think in our current medical system that we really teach people well that your thyroid is affected by several other systems going on in your body, and just treating your thyroid specifically isn't going to help you reverse that condition. You've got to treat the body as a whole, and you have to look at it as one organism that really works together for vibrant health.
I agree. And I love how you're really putting in, you're spinning in the whole mind, body, and spirit elements, because this is Mega Wellness Summit, Mind, Body, and Spirit Connection series. And, I do feel there's elements of food that's happening today, obviously with, toxins and pesticides and GMOs. Those are all playing a role into destroying our thyroid and destroying our health. Then we have, on top of that, we have birth control. We have, pharmaceutical drugs, and we have vaccines and all those things, right? So the problem that, unfortunately, we're having is making a connection of things that happened in the past. Okay, so a lot of brilliant doctors will take you back and do a fantastic history to really pinpoint the cause of it. But, our mainstream medical doctors, like, how long did it take you to figure out that you had Hashimoto's? That was the reason, the root cause. Took a long time, doctor after doctor.
Right.
And you know what I mean? And so if you go back to the root cause of it, what if it was years ago taking the pill all that time? Or, what if it was pesticides that led up to where you are today with illness? And I don't think we are really thinking about our future when it comes to what we're putting in our mouth and what we're injecting into our body today. So we're going to forget. So I really hope that comes through to people, that everything you do, it will come back. And you
right,
have
it's
to
a cumulative effect, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the trauma, like the trauma with you, with getting hit, having a car accident, that's a trauma. These traumas trigger autoimmune disease. And, having a baby, that's a trauma on the body. And so from there, typically what happens from what I have heard and what I have noticed is that after a second baby, trauma on the body, that the thyroid is affected. And so therefore, women aren't able to have a second child very easily as the first. Right? It's pretty common.
It's extremely common. And even with every child you have after that, it's just harder and harder to keep that thyroid back in balance.
Exactly. And, typically what I've seen is women go into a hyperthyroid. And so I wanted to ask you if you can distinguish the difference, because I've asked other experts in the past if you can really, simplify the differences between hyper and hypothyroid for us.
Sure. So hypothyroid, I'm going to go simple. Hypothyroid is when you're not producing enough thyroid hormones, right? And so your body becomes sluggish. Things start to slow down. And what you find is weight gain and fatigue and things and even some anxiety, even though that's a speed up, but you just find everything is kind of moving more slowly. Whereas hyper, you're producing too much, and so your body is really, really sped up, and you might lose a ton of weight, you might be shaky and panicky, you might be losing your hair, all kinds of things. But what's really interesting, and that I think a lot of people don't know, and doctors don't talk about often enough, is that they say statistically it's something like 80 to 90% of all hypothyroid conditions are actually the root cause is Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is the autoimmune component of hypo and hyper. And what's interesting about that is that it's considered, more of it's the cause or the root cause of hypothyroidism. But when you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, you will volley back and forth between all the symptoms. You will have hyper symptoms. You will have hypo symptoms. And that's why it gets so hard to diagnose, right? Because first of all, you're having this broad spectrum of symptoms where it doesn't seem very easy to pinpoint this is X condition, this is Y condition. And secondly, the doctors just don't test for it. So you have to be completely outside those normal ranges a lot of times for insurance to even pay for the thyroid antibody test, which is a shame because by the time you're outside of that large, quote, normal range for your TSH and other thyroid markers, you're really, really sick. Whereas if doctors and insurance companies just tested immediately for the autoimmune condition, which they are saying is 90% of the reason why people have any sort of thyroid condition, you could catch it way earlier and reverse it much quicker.
Okay, let's talk about reversing. So what I have seen is that a lot of women do end up with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And so how did you heal start from the beginning if you can? What was the first moment that you got the news? What was the process for you, if you can? We don't have 5 hours, but we have some time. If you can explain, how was that for you, the transition? What did you have to do with supplements?
Yeah. Well, the process, first I want to say the process is both the same for a lot of people and highly individualized, right? Because everybody's body is different and everybody has different needs. So we have to start from that place. For me personally, first of all, the only reason I didn't end up medication to begin with is that my doctor didn't believe in it. He said, I can give you medication and you're going to feel great for 3 months. Like I can help you with it. You're going to feel great. And then 3 months later, this medication is going to stop working and I'm going to have to raise the dosage. And then I'm going to have to continually raise the doses. And that's going to go on and on and on until your thyroid atrophies. And so his big belief was, you can do this with food and lifestyle changes. And then if you get to a point where it plateaus and we need to consider thyroid medication, let's start there. So that was a big aha for me because, first of all, I didn't even know what my thyroid was when I got this diagnosis. Like, I didn't know I had a thyroid. I didn't know what it was. I didn't really know what this meant. But I did know it was serious by the way he sat me down and basically said, you can catch it now and reverse it, or if you let this go on and on and on and you don't change anything, it's just going to get worse for you. So first of all was just this awareness that healing was in my hands, that, he was a great doctor in the way that he empowered me to take control of my health. So that was the first part of my process. And I don't think that a lot of women get that sort of nurturing. I don't think they're told, you have the power to change this. It's sort of top down, like you'll come to me and I'm going to medicate this for you and help you feel better and help you relieve your symptoms. But there's no sort of you're not really always given that power to take care of your health. So that was the initial start of my process was, wait, this is on me to do this, and I have to make certain changes. So with that, obviously came a lot of resistance because as he educated me, and also I educated myself by doing my own research, I learned I was going to have to change so many things about my life. I was a type A go-getter perfectionist control freak. And everything I learned was I needed to be calm. I needed to nourish my body. I needed to stress less. I needed to surrender more. I needed to, relax. I needed to put time in for self-care. And I was especially not supposed to push through things when I felt crummy. Well, this was just like the antithesis to the entire person I was. So that I was really resistant to. I thought, oh, no, that's for weaklings. That's for weak people. I had a lot of stories and a lot of limiting beliefs around all of this. So resistance, I would say, was my first step in this whole thing. Learning that I was going to have to change my lifestyle, then learning I was going to have to, quote, give up some of my favorite foods. And I thought, I'm out. I'm not doing this. I don't want this. But then because of the empowerment and saying, well, you know what, I don't actually want to feel so terrible I can't take care of my son and I can't live out my dreams and I don't want to hang out with my friends and I don't have even a relationship with my husband right now because he doesn't know what to do with this new person he's seen who just can't get her head off the couch and is just a lackluster. When I looked at that, I said, all right, I'm going to have to start making these changes. So I would say mindset was really the first step in my process is overcoming that resistance to making these changes. And then the second part was really taking action on the changes. So like I said, I really started taking action on all of the self-care things and all of the lifestyle things because I was just so holding out that I wouldn't have to change my diet because I really wanted to be able to eat whatever I wanted whenever I wanted it, right? And
yes.
I probably stayed sick an extra 18 months because I was resistant to changing my diet. And, I wouldn't change any part of it at that time. So, I want women out there to understand these are normal feelings. And, you don't have to be perfect and you don't have to do it all at once because what I learned, which was most successful for me, was, and I would say it's most successful for most of my clients. I have some clients who make all the changes all at once. They're just that type of person, and they nail it, and then they feel better in 6 weeks, right? But for me, it took me a little bit of extra time because I had to overcome my mindset and my resistance, and then I had to start following the diet I knew that would be healing for me.
So what did your diet look like before you changed? Because you were a chef. You're not working as a chef anymore, correct?
Right. No.
Right. So you were a chef. So what did your diet look like before changing it?
Well, there's been so many different versions of this diet. So, for instance, I grew up in the Midwest. So when I grew up in the Midwest, my diet was biscuits and gravy and bread and cheese with cheese and bread. So that was my whole diet.
Where in the Midwest did you grow up?
I grew up in Indiana.
Oh, okay.
Which I adore. But, for food, it's not, a hotbed of diversity when it comes to food. So I was eating, and I ate a ton. In college I lived off of Gatorades and Taco Bell. So I came from this really highly processed diet, and my parents both worked. I was a latchkey kid. They really empowered me with independence, but they weren't there or available to make the beautiful home cooked meal. No, these poor people had to work really hard to give us the life that we had. So my sister and I were left opening up cans of beans, eating Hostess snacks like it was our job, doing whatever we felt like we wanted to eat, which could mean pancakes for dinner sometimes. So, I started from that place. Then when I moved to California after college, I saw that people ate completely differently. So I started adding these things called vegetables to my cart. So this is like a new step in my diet was, all right, I'm going to add in a couple of these vegetables, and smoothies were the big thing at the time. So I'm going to start making these smoothies. And so that's how I was starting to get some fruit and vegetables. And then what really changed just even my view on food was living in Italy. So I got to live in Italy for a year, and I cooked there. And prior to that, when I was a chef, the chefs are notorious for eating the worst food because we're on our feet all day long. And then we're grabbing everything, leftovers, whatever, anything processed, is shoving food in your mouth. You're never sitting down to have a meal. And you eat, and then you crave, it's a big stressful day whenever you're a chef, so then you crave that real comfort food. So prior to moving to Italy, I just ate terribly, right? I moved to Italy, and then I really learned how easy it is to make simple but wildly delicious meals. And so I took a lot of that back with me, as that this is just such an amazing way to eat. So when we moved back to the States, I had, started into the whole foods realm. I was really eating whole foods at that time, but I was eating, the Italian diet. When you live in Italy, you start off with a cafe and a pastry in the morning. You might have a pizza for lunch, and then, when you have your dinner, you're going to have some bread, some pasta, and I would say that in Italy you have way more vegetables than the standard American meal here. You have lots of vegetables, and you have lots of great meats, but also what comes with it is a whole plate of gluten, right? So that big shift was making that change from organic whole foods to sort of more of a paleo-style diet that was, okay, yeah, it's whole foods, but I'm not eating all the grains, and I'm not eating any gluten. What I'm eating, where I'm getting my carbs, are from, really great vegetables, and eating just a ton more vegetables and high-quality fats, high-quality meat, and fruit.
Right. And for one, I heard that Italy's pasta and wheat are different than ours. So somebody who has a sensitivity to our bread over here in the U.S. can go and process and digest an Italian or a European wheat much better than you are here. Is that kind of how you feel as well?
Absolutely. I tested it out, to be honest. So I lived in Italy in 2003, and then went back in 2005 and 2007, and this is prior to my thyroid diagnosis. So I was eating everything there. So I just went back to Italy in October, and I thought, how am I going to eat here now that I have all of these new, quote, dietary restrictions? And first of all, I tried, so in 7 years, I hadn't really had, am I doing the math right? Yeah. In 7 years, I hadn't had any gluten. And the only time I'd had gluten is, let's say, if I went out to a restaurant and then I decided to have some French fries and there was some cross-contamination in the fryer oil. And when I would have that here, I would start coughing immediately. I would have an anaphylactic reaction, and I would get bloated, and I could tell immediately that I ate gluten. When I went over to Italy in October, I wanted to try out what would happen if I ate my favorite pastries that I used to eat when I lived there. So for the first couple of days of my trip, I ate a pastry for breakfast every morning, and I had zero reaction. And what I found out from my old boss who works there is that their flour, first of all, they're big on no GMOs. So first of all, they have no GMOs in that flour. And then secondly, the flour that they use for pasta and for pastries, it's called 00 or 00 flour, which is the lowest it's the flour containing the least amount of gluten that there is for glutinous flours. And so they use that, and that makes it easier for us to digest. And also, there's just no chemicals in it. So I had just no bad reaction to it. But, of course, because of molecular mimicry, which, is where gluten mimics your thyroid molecules. And so if you have Hashimoto's, when you eat gluten, oftentimes your body will mount a response to the gluten that actually creates more thyroid antibodies for yourself. And, those thyroid antibodies are basically mark your cells for destruction. They're not what destroys the thyroid, but they mark the cells for destruction. So it's an indication of, how much your body is ready to destroy your thyroid, let's call it. For that reason, I still chose not to overindulge in gluten when I was in Italy, and when I came back to the States, decided for sure not to continue eating gluten. But just because of that portion, it's a very, grains can be still extremely cross-reactive no matter where you are, just because of the nature of autoimmunity.
Absolutely. I spoke to Dr. Isabella Wentz for last Mega Wellness Summit, and she really stressed on really omitting gluten. And that was gluten is a huge root cause of autoimmune disease for one, specifically attacking the thyroid. And so would you agree with her on that?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And absolutely. And I wouldn't mess with that. And I have to say to the listeners, I wouldn't have even tried to eat gluten in Italy if I hadn't reversed, the condition. So if I was still in the midst of my healing process, I would not recommend eating gluten from any source until you've overcome that hurdle. And then I would still not recommend eating any gluten in America, but then you could try with countries that have cleaner food products. I mean, that's the thing that really astounded me. First of all, I thought when I went back to Italy, it was going to be way harder to be gluten-free. And in fact, it's easier. They actually are much better educated on gluten sensitivities and allergies. The government actually gives families with children who test positive for celiac, they give them extra stipends for the higher prices in gluten-free foods. And every restaurant I went to was able to make an accommodation without any problem, and they asked me really important questions to understand the level of my sensitivity. It was the easiest country I've ever been to eat gluten-free, when you would think it would be the most challenging, right? So, but I would still say if I was in the midst of my healing process, I wouldn't have taken that chance yet. I really waited a long time before I started to introduce gluten in any form in my body.
Wow. I heard that they also test babies for it right when they come out.
Yeah, and they test them when they're, I think they also test them when they're 2 or 3 to make sure. And so they have a real compassion and understanding and respect for gluten sensitivities and allergies.
Wow. It's really sad that this is just now. I wouldn't say just now, but it really hasn't, gluten sensitivities haven't been out for very long. I didn't really even hear about what gluten was until probably 2006, 2007 is when I first started hearing about gluten allergies. Like who even knew that, what you could eat could cause you to be sick? I never even made that connection when I was younger. I mean, you just eat whatever you want. Oh, yeah, you eat that bread, it's going to make you sick? Yeah, right, bread can't make you sick. Literally,
right.
That's what I used to think. Yeah,
well, when
really
we're all young, you push through,
yeah.
right? When you're young, you have no symptoms of anything.
That's true. That's very true. And what I'm trying to teach my children today is that everything you put in your mouth, everything you put on your body and skin will affect your mind, body, and spirit in some sort of way. So if you choose to eat gluten, then you better watch your behavior. You choose to eat sugar, watch your behavior. Are you throwing up? Do you have diarrhea? Are your moods spiking high or low? So teaching them at ages 5 and 10, they still think I'm crazy, but that's okay, whatever. It is what it is. I thought my mother was crazy too, and she had this lifestyle since I was 5 years old. Is when I started really living more of a holistic lifestyle. And because she was sick, she has celiac disease, and so she didn't know what celiac disease was. No doctor could ever figure it out what was wrong with her. So they gave her all sorts of different diagnoses that were never it. Admitted to the hospital, really saying that she was crazy. Because that's another thing of thyroid, right? You're crazy.
Oh, right.
The mental illness, yeah. So really, if you have a mental illness or bipolar, you might want to check out your thyroid. And so I went through this with her, and so I thought my mother was crazy as well. Like, she would say, I can't eat bread because every time I eat bread, my nose plugs up. She would get anxiety. And so I was like, you know what? It's all in Ma's head. It's all in her head. And we're Italian, so it's very hard for us. It was very hard for us to even just get that notion that those two are connected. So it's really great to have people like yourself come on and really empower people to say, this is for real people. Nikki is not crazy. We're not crazy. This is happening in the world. And to really start waking up to the fact that this is real. That we can't just eat whatever we want, because when you eat whatever you want, you're going to be poisoned.
Absolutely.
Poisoned.
I mean, when I look at my grandmother, she lived until 96 in her house, took care of herself. She didn't die of a degenerative disease. She died because she was old. You know what I'm saying? And yet we're seeing, especially in America, we're seeing the sickest generation ever. Like, kids are so sick. There's so many kids with diabetes and obesity. These were not childhood illnesses when I was growing up.
No,
me neither.
We barely
even heard of an allergy. We had maybe one peanut allergy ever. My 7-year-old's in a class. 90% of the kids have allergies. I mean, nobody in his class eats gluten or nuts or dairy, because so many kids have all these different allergies. That's not the case when I was growing up. So, I mean, we've got to definitely acknowledge the correlation between what our food source has become and how sick we all are.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? We're not crazy. And once you soon realize that we're shifting the world with this knowledge, that we will no longer tolerate GMOs. We will push them out. Because if you don't buy it, if you don't purchase GMO foods, guess what? They go out of business. If you reject pharmaceuticals from going into your body, yes, there is a time and a place, but really we need to get it together. We need to understand the root cause of all things and what chemicals are we injecting into our body. We really need to ask more questions. So, Jen, thank you so much for just igniting the wisdom in all of us and letting us all know that we have the power, just like that doctor said to you. You have the power to change this, not because I am the big doctor here in the white coat saying that, you have to listen to me. It's you have the power to change this. And you have to make some changes in your lifestyle. And so I hope that every doctor and every person in power will go ahead and say, it's okay. You also have the power to do this. And we give our power away so often. And, thank you so much for coming on here and saying, you can change this yourself, and you have the power to do that. And you did it. You changed your whole diet. I mean, you're a chef. I mean, that's crazy to really come to acceptance with that, because I know a lot of people who will not do that. They want to just have the magic pill cure them. rather than change their diet and change and really look in the mirror at who they are and start there. So bravo to you. Bravo to all those who are listening today. I hope that all the listeners today are going, you know what, I feel empowered, and I'm going to really take a look at my cabinets. Just start there. Take a look at your cabinets. Take a look at what's in your refrigerator, and start empowering yourself to make a difference in your own life. Because when you make a difference in your own life, you make a difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So because you are so amazing, you are giving away a free thyroid healing type assessment, right? This is a done-for-you report that you're giving to our listeners. Is that right?
Yeah, so basically it's an assessment. It's a short quiz where you'll get assessed to see where you are in your healing process. And I've kind of noted that there are 3 kind of healing types out there. So you get a custom report with that gives you first steps to help you where you're at start to heal. But what else it gives you are these printouts that you can bring into your doctor so that you don't get so much resistance from the doctor when you're asking for antibody tests, or so that your concerns aren't ignored and you're not brushed off. So I think
that's huge.
That's the feedback I'm getting, is that this, when people receive their report and they have these printouts, that this was like the biggest thing to going into their doctor, and we've just gotten such such positive feedback on that. And then as part of the free gift, people are also going to receive 13 free email coaching sessions with me, as if you and I are just sitting down having some tea, and I'm talking to you about all the different things that you can do to take back your health and empower yourself. So those go just right to you. Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for that, because I know that so many doctors, unfortunately, have to be educated. And if we know the right questions, if we know the right tests to take, it really just slashes the time in half. I mean, can you imagine if you had this when you were going from doctor to doctor to doctor trying to figure out what was wrong with you?
Oh, I know. I mean, the program I use for my group coaching clients is the program I dreamt would have been there when I first got diagnosed. Because when I got diagnosed, you can't even find that much out on the internet about this. I mean, it's only in the last 5 years that there's been this explosion of information. But before then, trying to find it yourself was really hard. So I really have always wanted to hand these resources on a silver platter to everybody, because I don't want anybody to feel alone in this like I did, and I want them to have the resources to start feeling better right away.
Awesome. And what is the thyroid video bundle? So you are offering for 50% off, which is awesome.
Yeah, so the Thyroid Video Bundle is a collection of 28 interviews I did last year with top experts about all the different facets of life when you're managing a thyroid condition. How to, when you're changing your diet and you're buying higher quality foods, how to do that on a budget, or how to find your root cause, how to balance your hormones with food, and then other inspirational videos about working on your mindset so that you can overcome some of those hurdles that we all face, and also so that you're empowered in using your voice. So we have 28 awesome video interviews, and it's just a bundle of great resources from top experts out there. And so I wanted to offer that to everybody at 50% off, because I know it gets so expensive managing these conditions, right? I mean, I spent thousands of dollars on doctors for, 3 years trying to figure out. It practically bankrupted us going through this, because I was just trying to find an answer. So I really want to give everybody as much as I can at either extremely affordable cost or for free. So, I mean, I just don't want people to suffer like I did.
Wow. I have chills. I really have chills because it makes me literally brings tears to my eyes when people go, okay, I want to help you. Here's your tools. And, there's so many people who are struggling, and I understand a lot of people don't have the money to really help themselves in the way that they need to. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, with sincere gratitude, thank you for being you, sharing your story, giving away this amazing tool, and also offering, videos, a video library for everyone to enjoy, to watch, to learn, and to implement into their own life. So I appreciate you, Jen, and thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure and an honor.
And honestly, you are truly a joy. And, I haven't talked to you, prior to today, and I hope that we can continue to stay in touch because you have so much to offer to people, and I know that people who are listening today will want to hear you again. So I hope that we can get you on again and get more questions answered. So
I would love that.
Me too.